Okay, I am recording. Ken, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Good to see you. So we chatted briefly the other day, and to give people context a little bit, Ken does some amazing work with couples, and I work mostly with individuals, but obviously individuals are in couples and are in relation in the world. So Ken and I were talking about what are some of the kind of presuppositions, or what are the conditions that make people good at relating, or allow them perhaps to improve in how they relate to friends and intimate partners. So I thought we'd jump off from there today, Ken. So again, welcome.
So, I gave this some thought, and one of the first things that came to mind is, like, if you want to have a good life with someone, you have to be able to have a good life. So, if you, what I often talk to people about, especially if they're single and they're like unhappy and looking to be in a relationship, one of the first things I have them look at is, what are the current problems in your life that you have your future partner as the solution to? So by that, I mean, what have you already made them responsible for in your life and you haven't even met them yet? And so something similar applies when you're in a relationship where, like, sorry, my cat, I don't know if you can hear my cat, but
no, please invite your cat. We're big fans of cats here.
Wonderful. So in relationship, if you want to have a great life with someone, you have to be able to have a great life. And so a lot of people point the finger at their partner as the reason why things aren't working well. And, really the truth is that a good life is built by two people who are ready to build a good life. And what they're doing is co-creating together. So that's the first piece is, what state are you in that you're coming into this relationship with? And to what degree do you use your partner as an excuse for why things are bad versus actually, what's your level of thriving, if that makes sense?
It's a great place to start. I'm recalling something that was very significant for me years ago when I was working with a coach, when coaching first started being a thing. And he talked to me about needs, a need being something that if it's not met in your life, you're distressed. Like food is a need. If you don't have food, it becomes a problem. Otherwise, you don't notice it so much. And he pointed out to me that at that time, I was trying to get all my needs met through the relationship. And he suggested that was not a good idea. He said, make a list of your top needs and do whatever you can to get them met, so that then your partner can show up however they want to show up. And furthermore, he said, one thing that was interesting is he said, if your needs are getting met, then your partner is actually more willing to share those things with you. If you're not coming from a place of neediness.
That's very true.
So is that sort of kind of pre-homework that you give somebody, essentially, like to take an inventory?
Yes, you could call it that, but it also applies when you're in a relationship. Like, to what degree, just like you said, to what degree are you outsourcing something to your partner to make them responsible for something? If they're totally on board and they're like, yes, I'm happy to meet that need, then there's no problem. But you're not entitled to anything. Like, literally, there's nothing. When you're in a relationship, there's literally nothing that you're entitled to. And so, to the degree that you put responsibility on your partner for something that they don't want responsibility for, that's you're putting it in the wrong place. And so, yeah. And the more I'll say this too, like the more you show up as someone who is getting their needs met, the more you have to offer, and the more your partner is drawn to you, attracted to you, the more you can actually co-create with your partner. Like you become more valuable to them.
Boy, I have fireworks going off in terms of ideas. One of them is, when you were talking about that you can't expect something from your partner, you used a different word.
Entitlement.
In being entitled to something. What occurred to me is it's so easy in relationship when you get something consistently from your partner, it's so easy for that to slip into the idea of an expectation. Right? Yeah. It's like, well, you always cook dinner, so why aren't you cooking dinner?
Yeah.
And I think that's a place where folks can get into trouble. I've certainly gotten into trouble there.
Which brings us to our second kind of foundation, which is like, to what degree are you guys communicating? Like if a pattern has been established, and you're accustomed to that pattern, like there's nothing that can't be changed, but it would be helpful if that was talked about. Do you know what I mean? So if the one, to take your example, if the one who's been cooking dinner every single time suddenly changes their mind, it's not like that can't be renegotiated. Like there's nothing that can't be worked out, but it would be helpful and useful if some communication, if some conversation took place around it. Like, hey, I've been doing this. I'm actually starting to get resentful about this. I don't actually want to be in charge of this anymore. Let's work out what our new game is going to be here. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a co-creation. This is the game we've been playing up till now. I want to change the game. Let's come up with what our new game will be, and we'll do it together. Does that make sense?
I really love the term co-creation, mainly because I love creativity, but also people don't create or don't intentionally create something that they don't want. Right? You don't cook food for yourself that you don't like. You sit down and you think about what would be good to try, right? So
right.
That's a great term, and
it's a term that I use almost all the time. Like it's so foundational to the work that I do, is that you're co-creating a life together. Do you know what I mean? And somehow, just like what you're feeling, somehow the use of that particular word has them understand what it is they're doing in a certain way. Like you're co-creating your lives together. So how do you want that to look?
And it's nice to think of time and energy going into that endeavor.
For sure.
I mean, I think there's a time for just being and discovering what emerges. And it's also really nice to sit down and think, how would we like this to look or feel?
Yeah.
Something that was coming up for me and leading up to this talk is the idea of, not just how we communicate with the other, but how we also communicate with ourselves, which is, a big part of my work. And, how do we treat ourselves? How do we communicate with ourselves? And especially around moments when we're interacting with the other. It's at times it's like there's two dialogues happening. There's the dialogue on the outside, and then there's the translation process that's going on internally as you're receiving things. So I was thinking that's another kind of super skill that's really useful.
Absolutely. And in some ways that relates to where we started this conversation, which is You know, what is your relationship with yourself? What is the state of your handle on your own life? What is this your relationship? You know, what is your handle on your own state of being, your own capacity to thrive? You know, like independent of this other human being, what's your starting point? And included in that is what's your self-talk? Is it all criticism? Is it all self-doubt? Is it all arrogance? Is it all victim? Like, is it all the world is out to get me? Or do you speak compassionately to yourself? Do you speak confidently to yourself? Do you speak respectfully to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And all of those then translate into how you relate with other human beings.
Yeah, so I would put that as another prerequisite. I think the other one that we touched on the other day is really a desire or a commitment to be in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. There's a couple things to say. You know, there's often two things going on at the same time. Often people will be drawn to each other for reasons they can't really fully name. There's just a feeling or a rapport that they had, something that feels good in the dynamic between them. Could be sexual chemistry, may not be sexual chemistry, may just be some kind of rapport, like something clicks. And the inner being over here connects with the inner being over there. And it kind of transcends all of the packaging and the facades and all that stuff. And there's these two inner beings who actually like see each other and connect through the facade and through like all our cultural stuff. So if that's what drew them together, that's something to build on. And then separate from that, there's all of us have beliefs about how relationships are supposed to go. They're so deeply ingrained, we're not even conscious of them. And so all of a sudden you picked someone for this reason of what the word I use is connection. Like, you know, it's the thing that you can experience with another human being that you can't experience. Like you could have a fantastic life, but there's something missing if you're experiencing that life alone. So there's a thing that you can only experience with another human being. So now there's all our ideas about what's supposed to happen that are deeply ingrained and we're not even aware we're playing them out. And then there's the real thing that brought us together. And sometimes those are in deep conflict. And so I was drawn to this person, or I was drawn to you, and I don't know, for reasons that are deeper than my checklist of what I think I'm looking for, something deeper than that. Then there's my checklist of all, like, who I thought I would be attracted to, the life I thought I was going to want. This person doesn't agree with my political views. They're, you know, a fucking vegan and I'm a carnivore, or whatever the mismatch is. Or like, I've been looking for someone, I want to have 3 children and I want to, you know, buy a house. This person is not right for that vision. So then you have to choose between the vision and the real life actual connection you have with a real live, complex, quirky human being. And that's a turning point. And for me, I often work with the checklist couple, like everything, like this person is everything I was looking for. They're so perfect on paper. We just don't seem to, for some reason, I'm not happy in the relationship and I'm not sure why, right? Like they got the checklist, but they don't have the connection. When that happens, that's really hard for me to coach. There's not a lot I can do. But the couples who were drawn to each other for something deep, like that deep human being to human being connection, who then are struggling with all the ways that they don't fit each other, they don't match each other,
Mm.
That's my domain. Those are the couples I love to work with, because that is a solvable problem, and we can actually get them into a fantastic relationship. It may not look the
Mm.
way they thought that was going to look, but all of this is what I mean when I say co-creation. And this ties
Mhm.
in with what you started with, which is you have to want to be in the relationship. You have to choose the person, right? So
Mhm.
what I'm really saying here is someone says, you're the person I chose. I'm going to set aside what I thought, like my pre-designed, preconceived ideas about what I thought I wanted,
Mhm.
because now I'm in connection with you. I'm in co-creation with you. We together are going to figure out what we want our lives to look like. Co-creation. We're gonna co-create. And if I've got some preconception that I'm comparing you to
Mhm.
and judging you negatively because you don't fit my preconception, I'm going to throw the preconception out, because we are going to create our vision of the life that we're going to have. We're going to co-create our life because you're the
Mm.
person that I'm choosing to do that with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it sounds like, in the model you're describing, that the initial connection is kind of the lighter fluid or the fuel that will allow them to work through the difference. Whereas it sounds like from your experience, that doing it in the other direction doesn't work quite as well. Like,
It's in, it's interesting. We're so indoctrinated in this idea that the way to create an amazing life, and there's truth to this, like that's the messed up thing, is that there's truth to this, that the way to create a great life is you envision the life that you want. You picture it, you envision it.
mhm.
Then you do all these things. You might do manifestation. You might like make a list of ways to get to that thing. Like there's various ways of doing it,
Mhm.
right? But you you have it in your mind first, and maybe there's some embodiment thing where, like vibrationally you have to be at the level of the vibration. You will
Mhm.
attract all these different ways of, or you envisioned it, you have to go to school to get this degree, like
Mhm.
whatever, whether it's concrete or mindset or whatever. You start with the vision and then you move to manifest that vision. All of that breaks down when you're in connection with another human being, for two reasons. There's two reasons why that seemingly, like, what other way would there be to do, like, it's seemingly an obvious way to do it, but there's two reasons why it breaks down. The first is
Mm.
you're now with another human being. You better be creating it with them. That's the first
Mm.
reason.
Mhm.
But the second reason, and this is more subtle, um, we're not that good at knowing what it is that we really want when it comes to relationships.
Mhm.
The truth is, the reason why we're in relationship is to experience that connection.
Mm.
And our vision, the house that we want, the children that we want to have, like the vision that we created was really just our best guess at what we would need to do to experience that connection. Then we find someone and we have the connection, and we are compromising the connection in order to pursue this vision.
Mm.
So what I do is I reorient people back to what drew them together, because that's actually the reason why we're in relationship, to experience that thing that they have. So
Mm.
everything gets reoriented towards what's going to honor your connection, what's going to cultivate your connection, what's the truth about what your connection is. And you're going to build a vision that is in service of the connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of one of my favorite metaphors, which is the Wizard of Oz, like that they're going on
Mm.
this journey to build their vision, and then they realize that they can go directly there. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
so that begs the question: what grows connection, or yeah, what encourages connection?
Yeah. Um, So a few things come to mind. Obviously, like vulnerability and honesty, meaning there is a guy who has this theory that within all of humanity and also in the animal kingdom, there are only a few fundamental ways of relating. One is authority and dominance, meaning authority ranking, like this person is here and this person's here. This person will make more decisions for the group. This person will receive some benefits of being inside of the group. So teacher, student, manager, employee, things like that. The second is kind of commerce of, I have something that I'm offering. The third is more like family kinship, where you're fundamentally operating from generosity, like I love you, I care about you. My orientation is to do things for you, to like, if I have my eye on what your needs are, what your wants are, and I'm constantly thinking about how can you get yours, because I care, you are deeply important to me, right? Family, best friends, lovers, right? So when we are operating in commerce, meaning I stopped doing this thing I know you want because you stopped doing this thing that I want, and I've got it on lockdown until like some kind of commerce, right? Or I'll do this thing in order to get you to do this other thing, right? You're not actually in the realm of intimacy and connection. You're in the realm of some of this commerce, fundamentally other way of relating that actually has different evolutionary source, right? It evolved separately. Dominance hierarchy evolves. These are all ways of relating that evolved separately. So if you want to get into the territory of intimacy and connection, one of the things is that you tell the truth, you are honest and vulnerable, that you operate from generosity, you operate from a point of view of that you have your eye on your partner's needs. Like who like when you have friends over and you cook a meal, you want to share your meal with them, right? It's that kind of thing, like fundamentally operating from surplus, and I want everyone in this relationship to get theirs, right? So I've named two. One is just vulnerable honesty. The other is this fundamental orientation towards you want them to get theirs, right? I think we could probably think of some more, but those are some like some basics.
Yeah, it's interesting in kind of the NLP realm. We have this distinction of self and other. Self means that my attention is on getting my needs met. Other is on my attention's on you getting your needs met. And it's easy to be simplistic with that model and say like self is bad, other is good. But it's not that simple. And what I found over the years is they actually loop on each other. And I think what tends to work well is a balance or a fluidity in moving between one and the other. Not getting caught in either position for too long, perhaps. But being an other, but also keeping aware that there are things that you want also. And holding,
I don't think you throw
hold a we space, so.
Yeah, I don't think you throw yourself out, like if you are not able actually to give at the level that you can or take care of another human being the way you would want to, if you yourself are so depleted or like nutrient depleted. And by nutrient, I mean things like intimacy, connection, sex, whatever fills you up and nourishes you. Yeah, you can't, like you also it isn't an either or. It isn't an
Mm,
either or, right? Like you can't,
mhm.
it isn't that you're being generous from a place of being depleted
Or empty. Yeah.
or empty. But I think it's interesting. Like we've touched on this a couple of different ways. One
Hmm.
was talking about entitlement. And now we're kind of circling back around to the same thing, which I'll say this, see how this lands. Um, the difference between a request and a demand or an expectation or an entitlement.
Yeah. Yeah. We came full
So
circle.
yeah, so are you treating your partner like they owe you something? They're obligated to give it to you for whatever reason. Like, you know where this comes up in provider protector. It's like he's the like one
Ah.
he's
Hmm.
the provider protector.
Hmm.
She's like the nurturing, loving person. And
Mm,
so where that type of relationship can work well if people are bought into it. But where it tends to break down, I see this so much. I see this all the time is he unconsciously has a list of things that he is buying with his providership.
hmm.
What is it? It would be easy to say it's sex. It's not. You know what it is? It's her.
Acknowledgement.
it- it's he's going to outsource to her responsibility for his emotional well-being.
Mm,
So she's the emotional provider. That becomes her job. And
mm,
so if there's ever an argument where he's saying, like, this is the quintessential thing. I've given you this and this and this. The least you can do is be happy and blah blah blah. Like all I wanted you to do is be happy. You know what that's a synonym for? Your job is to be the emotional supplier of good feelings in this relationship. That is
mm,
that is your job, and that is what I purchased. And I see so many women who are fucking tired of that role. Do you know what I mean? So that's
mm,
where that breaks down. That's where that breaks down is what is the unspoken um, thing that he believes he's buying with his providership and his protectorship. And if
mm,
they don't talk about it, that's where it runs into problem. If they understand all these things that I'm saying and they're fully bought in, great. But this
mm.
is where it often breaks down.
So it sounds like it's interesting in that example, you're sort of going back to the commerce model. And I'm
Mhm.
assuming there are places in the relationship where it's more that relational, affection based, and then other places where you're saying, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this, and that's our agreement.
It's an agreement,
Unfortunately,
right?
most people are not explicit about their agreements, and that's where they get into trouble. And I would
Yeah.
I would say that that's another fundamental super skill is being really good at agreements
Yeah.
and clear agreements.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So often with guys who find themselves in a relationship, like I often get people come to me and they're on the verge of breakup. She's like, I can't take this anymore. I'm sick of you. I'm leaning towards divorce. And we really want to talk to you before we pull the trigger and file papers. So we talk, and I'm talking to him, and I have to have this just excruciatingly uncomfortable conversation with him where I look him in the face and I say, "You're not going to like what I have to say, but you are entitled to nothing.
mm,
You are entitled to nothing." And he has to confront within himself, all of a sudden he has to confront within himself that he believed, because we've been told by society that if he's a good provider and protector and blah blah blah, that he will have a loving wife who adores him and the good feelings, right? And he has to confront that can't be bought. And then actually he has to learn to be a source of good feelings in the relation. He has to learn some of the emotional skills that he gave her responsibility for.
So I imagine that goes both ways. And by the way, just for the record, Ken and I both exchange genders in relationships. So we're, you know, even though we're talking about perhaps masculine and feminine archetypes, you know, they're exchangeable.
It
so
is.
that,
It
so
is.
the she in
It
this
is.
example is also not entitled to anything.
That's right. That's right. There are ways in which we'll say the emotional provider, the one who has been showing up with good feelings that has them both feel good, thinks that they are earning something and then later entitled to something. And you're right about gender. It is, you know, quite often I'll see that in a heterosexual relationship, it can also, which this may not be anyway, but in a heterosexual relationship, it might be a woman who is a provider, the woman who is like the rational one in the relationship, and her partner is the feeler. You know, that happens. She's the one with the libido, right? Like breaking all these traditional rules. And I just default to what the more common ones are, but absolutely they're in no way set in stone that they're actually tied to one gender or the other. All of these things happen, but in different combinations.
You know, probably 3 or 4 points earlier, another thought came into my mind, which is that that we source sustenance also in our work at times, and I think that's an important thing to be aware of in the relationship as well. That sometimes, you know, we get this connection in relationship, and we also get a connection hopefully through our work or through whatever we're pursuing that's meaningful.
Or through friendships outside the relationship. Like, to have friends outside the relationship is so valuable for the relationship. Because it means that you're getting nourishment of a connection, maybe not physical intimacy or affection, but rapport from someone other than your partner. That like, when I was learning this stuff, I had a best friend, a guy, a colleague of mine, as we were teaching this stuff and also learning, like we were simultaneously students and teachers of this work. And what we discovered was that our friendship with each other greatly enhanced our relationship because, first of all, we could keep each other sane and support each other. And secondly, we could show up already having connection. And so it takes, if you're alone and lonely, then all of a sudden, remember, we're talking about what is your partner responsible for? If they're responsible for providing all of your nutrient of connection and intimacy, if they're willing to do it, great. But if they're not, you know, you can take some pressure off of them by having some friendships, by having a work life that you come home happy and fulfilled from work. So these other ways of like these other things greatly enhance the health of the relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I think there's another pitfall that can happen there, which is when people are connecting outside of the relationship, at times it's easy to interpret that as that you're withdrawing your connection from your partner.
Right.
And I think that's like, if we made a list of myths that mess up relationships, I would say that's one of them.
Yeah, you have to, there's a kind of possessiveness that can take place where your partner having anything good outside the relationship feels threatening. And that is not healthy. That's not going to lead to a healthy, happy relationship. So along with saying having friends or having a rich, full life outside the relationship, that also means you have to have the self-esteem and the wholeness to have it be that when your partner has a rich, full life away from you, that you see that as good. And that, you're right, there's a dynamic tension there, because it can be confronting to have your partner be, either maybe they're doing really well and they're like, there's envy, which is, I'm envious of that you're having this good thing happen, whether it's your job, a promotion, or whether it's friendships or just going out and having a good time. There's envy. Then there's insecurity. I'm afraid that if your life gets good, that triggers my fear of abandonment. So envy, insecurity. Yeah. Here's my cat, by the way.
Yeah.
And the third one is possessiveness, which is trying to control the situation. So those are.
Second, my processor is running, is catching up.
Great.
Yeah, I think one thing is, if your partner goes and is connecting with someone else in a respectful way, not in a way that violates the relationship, but say with a friend, right, and you're feeling less than, that's a place, for me, that would be a place where coaching or some therapeutic work is probably needed there. That
absolutely,
it's like the insecure attachment, and those are things that can be healed, and that's really important.
Yeah.
I also, you made me aware of another trap, which is not only do we at times look to our partner to get our needs met, but we look to satisfying their needs as a kind of ransom, almost. You know what I mean? I'm gonna keep cooking for you so that you'll stay around.
Yep.
And then if you got a meal from someone else, I'm threatened.
Yep, exactly.
Because my utility just plummeted. Right?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
That's a house of cards.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.
This is a good list. We're getting the list of the positive conditions, or kind of super skills.
Yeah.
And the list of really some of the challenges or things that get in the way, that interfere. Yeah. What's your cat's name?
Here, let me show you. This one's name is Maggie.
Okay.
We have one more whose name is Greta.
Okay, Maggie and Greta. Sounds like an old movie. Well, Ken, I think that's a good place to pause for now.
I think so. We covered a lot of ground, didn't we?
Yeah, really quickly. That was, like I said, it reminded me of like when you have a bunch of firecrackers going off. So, really nice. Well, thank you. Yeah. And hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah, sounds great.
Great.